Hey, don't really know where this video is going to go. Kind of a response to two arguments taking place, discussions. One between Nick and Armando about, the doom, the, the economic problems. And the other between Matt and some guy named Thomas. So it's like an older guy. I'll post the link over there. He's a happy guy, they're phantasmagoricals, but they're, they do their stuff with a smile on their face and talk about things like human love and community, and that's going to come to the rescue. So the two, although the two conversations aren't related, they're sort of related, because it sort of comes down to, let's say this crashy thing happens. The question is, what's going to inherit the earth? I mean, are the meek going to inherit the earth? I mean, is the best of human psychology, if there is such a thing, going to inherit the earth? Or is it going to be the animal, the worst? Is the gorilla going to take over? Or is I don't know what you'd call it, the happy gorilla, the nicer gorilla that these people think exist? I mean, I won't call it intelligence, because they won't make that argument, because most people still don't get it, that intelligence it's just a scheming tool for most people. 90% of people just see their intelligence as a tool to use to calculate how to get what they want. They're not using their intelligence to define what they want. They're living a subjective life rather than trying to live an objectively good life. And that's in my opinion, I don't see how the meek come out good in the end. I just don't see how, because love isn't a real. It doesn't. The word doesn't have any meaning. People keep using it. Matt keeps using it like it's a real thing, and it's a subjective contrivance. It's a contrivance of nature. Nature has used this emotion to create tribes and communities and families, as a way of creating, of consolidating power. And that's all it's about. It's consolidating power. And that was what nature was rewarding. Natural selection was essentially rewarding armies. That's the game. Yeah, you have an army, you'll win the war. The better army wins. The bigger army, the more powerful army wins. The army willing to use the most malicious tactics wins. I mean, it's still the same brutal equation. And so I don't see, if this crash is allowed to take place in an atmosphere of chaos, I don't see anything rising out of that chaos but the worst of humanity. I mean, personally, I just don't see how it's possible for any other equation to work out, because there's not going to be any reward for being thoughtful and decent and nice. There's going to be lots of reward for being cold and brutal and efficient, and it's not going to be pretty. And so I would argue to Armando, who has this, this perception that somehow the doom isn't going to happen because the government's going to step in and spend a whole big pile of money fixing up stuff and doing things, money it doesn't have. I mean, we're $10 trillion in debt. Somehow that's got to be accounted for, and somehow, and the unavoidable implication of that debt is that the dollar has to be eviscerated. It has to be ripped to pieces in terms of its value in the world. I mean, whether it retains any value in this country, we might have some control over, but in the world it's not going to have any value. And that's a whole nother argument, is whether we should start this consolidation, this community thing. Maybe we have to start that sooner rather than later. We have to become self-sufficient, not just as individuals, not just as little communities, but as a nation, before this all turns to shit. And it's going to turn to shit. I think there's a ways out of it. I think there's ways to control the crash, to take the real damage out of it, the harsh and worst damage out of it, because there's just so much waste in the world we've created. And I blame most of that waste on the meme, the parasitic, idiotic, moronic idea that has infected, and so to Thomas I'd say yes, memes are infections, they are viruses, they are sicknesses that get into people's brains, these sick ideas that they inbreed into each other like a religion. They just breed it. Religion is effectively bred. We watch it happen. We see it happen in the world. We see it happen. People stay so consistent to that ideology that they're born to. And then there's these other social memes that are controlled by the industrial complexes of our businesses and our media. And one of these sick, disgusting, putrid memes is this whole capitalist ideology, this whole ideology of birthright and ownership that is just corrosive. That is not going to be a system that's going to allow for a decent crash or a reduced damage crash, because that system of personal greed and gluttony is only going to lead to, when the shit hits the fan, what do you think these kind of people are going to do, these capitalists? They're going to hoard. They're going to try to control everything. That's going to be their ambition. And there's not going to be any altruism taking place. There's not going to be any love for humanity. There's going to be defense of them and their kind and their people and all that kind of crap. But this whole idea, when you think about how much productivity has gained over the last 100 years, you think how much real work has been produced by humankind, and what do the workers have to show for that? Has their life gotten better? No, it's because the capitalists have gleaned all the value of that productivity. They're stealing the wealth of that work, the real value of that work. They're taking as much as they can suck out of it. And we watch it happen, just how the system works. It has no ethic. It will take purely, just overtly take advantage of desperation, and we will call that good business. And it's just idiotic. So that's got to go. That meme has got to be replaced by something more elegant. If human beings can't think better than this idea that we will, have this competition by these arbitrary and bizarre definitions of fittest, like you're born to the right family. If that's going to be the definition of fittest, being born to the right family, then forget it. We're not going anywhere. It's going to get really, really ugly. I think capitalism's got to die, and if we have to have a class war to do it, well, then it's not going to die in a way that's going to make anything but the worst of humanity rise out of it. If it dies because we do deliberately change the meme, because we do change the mental attitude, then we got some hope.
But I don't think it's going to happen by relying on human nature, okay? Because it's not our nature to be generous and fair. It's our nature to, especially when we're pushed, especially when something, our base values are at stake. Those aren't going to be how we're not going to be thinking about fairness. We're not going to be thinking about the future. We're not going to be thinking about all that crap. We're just going to be thinking about our survival, and then the fight's going to get ugly. Any weapon will be pulled out, and it'll be used. And, we've got to avoid that. And so I just don't see that there's just, we do have opportunity here, though, because there is so much preposterous, idiotic nonsense in the structure of our society. So much gluttony, in the hands of a few people, so much preposterous waste, that we can find a way to make this crash just a little bit of a bumpy ride. But it really has to be done deliberately. We have to take control of the crash. We have to take control of the steering wheel. If the government's going to take care of this problem, what it's got to do, it's got to work towards just forgetting the debt thing. Just start printing the money. Start devaluating. Do what we have to do. The money has to be devaluated. Let's just start doing it. Let's get the process underway. The market's going to have to crash. So let's just do it. Let's just get it started. So let's just start printing the damn money. Let the government print the money. effectively nationalize in terms of for the next 5 years or whatever the number's going to be, just say to every farm, every agricultural company that yes, we're not going to steal your assets, but you're just not going to make money for 5 years, okay? Because we're going to control your production. We're going to ensure that this country still produces energy, that it still produces food. Those are the two big ones. They have to be maintained. If that national infrastructure is allowed to crash, then everything goes to hell, okay? Because then every city becomes millions of desperate people, and that desperation will just spread out across the country, and it just, that's the recipe for doom. So the only way we can solve this problem is we've got to keep people where they are. We can't have them migrating for a better life. We can't have the Dust Bowl scenario, of the previous depression. Like I say, if people have food and they have energy, if those two things can be guaranteed, then we have hope, because then people have a structure from which they can build on. But if people have to waste their day's labor instead of doing something productive, they have to waste a day's labor cutting down local trees to heat their homes, or doing something else completely unproductive, especially cutting them down with a steak knife or some other stupid tool, especially being denied all technology, all power. We've got that. So I'm just saying that that's the key component, is to keep people empowered, keep them on a platform from which they can do productive work,